one thing that really comes to my mind is the way he played his deception, right? Adal Shah went for the biggest deception, right? He went straight to the lawmakers to get things done. When a oligarch, for example, a elite, right? Someone who is very rich, someone who is very up there, they want something done, they'll go straight to the top to get it done. When a politician, wants something done, they're not gonna go to the local police person, whatever. They gotta go to the police person's boss. They gotta go to the boss of the boss and get it done there, and it will trickle down. Like the Mexican cartels, right? They didn't just buy off like one police officer, two police officers for security. They bought off the generals of the army. They bought off the superintendents and the highest in the police force. They bought off those guys, which were a few individuals. But then the level of command trickles down, right? You buy off the president, you got the country, right? The biggest deception one can play is by going to the top of the top and controlling that individual. People have done that in the past, right? And I mentioned the Mexican cartels, I mentioned a little bit of India, sometimes current events as well, things like that are happening right now, right? And I think that really shows the truth of life. And that's kind of, what this charitr is showing here. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to a new episode in the Charitropakhyan series. Today we're covering the 39th charitr, or the 39th story, which is a continuation of the 38th story. So if you haven't checked out that episode, please do, as it will be important to understand this story. So now it's the turn of the robber, right? So we heard the story of the gangster and what he did, right? He went, there was this bet that was being placed by this woman, right, who's married to two individuals, or who has a relationship with two individuals. And one of them is a gangster, one of them is a robber. The gangster, so the woman, she makes a bet, whoever can play the best charitr, I'm gonna marry that person. Essentially, that's what the bet is, right? So the gangster goes out, he plays the charitr, he brings home, some gold coins, and now it's the robber's turn, right? So it's nighttime now, and the robber got up, sakal swan ko pees banayo, and he's gonna play a charitr now. And for this charitr, he's gonna need a costume, so he makes himself a dog costume. And where does he go? He makes his way into the house of Shah Jahan. So if you know your Indian history, you know that Shah Jahan was one of the Mughal emperors who ruled over India, Mughal India. We were kind of given this context of time frame for the last episode as well, when we heard the gangster, he was able to know when these coins, those gold coins, were minted, right? He was able to tell, like, okay, this gold coin was minted during Shah Jahan's time, this gold coin was minted during Jahangir's time, during Akbar's time, right? So these were all like Mughal emperors which came one after another, right? So Shah Jahan is kind of a very crucial character as well in understanding Sikh history as well, because the Guru's lives are connected to the Mughal emperor, as well, and the Mughal empire, So he makes himself a dog costume, right? And he makes his way into the house of Shah Jahan, dressed like a dog. And then as he makes his way there, he finds this individual who they call here a gappei. Gappei means like someone who gossips, right? So he finds an individual who's just gossiping away, all right? And this charitr, this one in particular, the 39th one, is not very detailed. So there's gonna be a lot of information I'm just gonna have to deduce on my own, and I'm gonna be sharing that. But if you look at the actual text, which will have a link down below, you'll see that there's not much detail given in certain parts, and the reader kind of has to make up some details to figure the story out, and that's kind of, I guess that's kind of like what the literature is meant to be about, right? The Qissa literature that we're exploring, you know, it's kind of not meant to be as detailed, right? So that's kind of what's happening here. All right, so this gossiper could be someone who is not necessarily is someone who's not necessarily creating the best image for Shah Jahan. Okay, because you'll see later on in the story, it looks like it was a great interest for Shah Jahan to get this person taken care of, right? And he's going to use that as leverage to grow a relationship with Shah Jahan. So we'll see how that goes. Until then, let's look at the next few stanzas here, and this next stanza in particular, it kind of just gives us detail to who this robber is. Like, you know, in the first story we were told who the gangster was, we were told his name, right? We're told a little bit about him. And now here in this story, because it's the robber's story, we're going to hear a little bit about the robber. Okay, Adal Shah naam taskar bar, his name is Adal Shah. Okay, Ayo Sa Shah Jahan Ju ke kar, and he has come to the house of Shah Jahan. Rajmati Nari hit gayo tah, and his wife, the same woman from the charitr of 38, right? He's come here for his wife, the love of his wife. Rajan ko Raja Sovat Jah, he's come to the den of the King of Kings, i.e. Shah Jahan. Savaiya bohro tarwar nikar ke chor sova gapya ke mar liyo. And so back to the story now. So what does Adal Shah do? What does this robber do, right? As he's dressed as a dog, he's disguised as the dog. He comes closer to this person, this individual, this gossiper, right? And I'm translated the gossiper as a journalist in my translations down below. And again, just because it fit the story well for me. So for that reason, I'm going to call the gossiper a journalist. Okay. So this robber, he grabs his sword. He has a sword underneath this costume of a dog that he's disguised in. He grabs his sword, slowly creeps up to the journalist, and with one clean swipe of his sword, he kills this gossiper. And then he makes his way into the bedroom of Shah Jahan, where Shah Jahan is sleeping. Yeah, I'm not really sure how he's made his way there. Like maybe no one saw the dog coming in. Like, so, little dog, let him into Shah Jahan's room, right? Whatever the case may be, he made his way into Shah Jahan's room, okay, where he was asleep. And discreetly, as he makes his way there, he takes off the turban, or the pug that Shah Jahan was wearing. It was a red turban. He takes it off, and because he has a plan, what he does is he has an egg with him. Okay, so he had a sword, and now he has an egg. Again, this is kind of how this story is gonna work. So he takes an egg and he breaks the egg onto the pants of the sleeping Shah Jahan, and you'll see why he does all this in a bit. Tab suthan saho utar dai sab bastran ko tin haath kiyo. Shah Jahan, he wakes up and he's like, oh wait, what's going on? Where's my turban? My turban's not here. He looks at his pants and they're dirty, and so he puts his hand out for some new clothes, and here's the robber, right, who takes off his disguise as a dog. He takes off his disguise, and now he pretends to be a guest of some sorts, and he gives Shah Jahan some new clothes. So Shah Jahan takes his clothes off, and the robber, he probably grabs some clothes from his closet or whatever, and he gives him a new pair of clothes. Fun ghost bat kari tehiso ke hit ke kar gaad hiyo. And after this exchange, right, of clothes, Shah Jahan and the robber, they start to have a conversation, So maybe he's just like, oh, who are you? Let's, and they start talking. And so we're going to be told what the conversation is in just a second. But right now we're going to be told why he, broke the egg and all that stuff in the first place. Dohra saha lakha biraj gira kini dur ijar. The reason he broke the egg on top of the pants of Shah Jahan was to make it look like Shah Jahan wet himself during the nighttime, right? Which is called like a wet dream or nocturnal emission, right? So basically that's kind of the look that he was trying to go for. And that's why he breaks an egg, onto his pants. So when he wakes up, he's like, oh, dude, my pants are dirty. I wet myself. And so he removes his clothes, right? That was the idea that he wanted him to do. And he did that, right? Bastar pagreya laal jote kine cho sambar. And then in that moment, this robber, he was able to take possession of Shah Jahan's clothes, which he's going to use later to prove that he did meet Shah Jahan. They had a conversation, and he's got to prove, look, I have his turban, I have his clothes, I met him, we became friends, kind of thing, right? To his wife. And so what was that conversation that Shah Jahan and the robber they had? So that's gonna be told here. Chaupai baith chor as katha prakasi ek chor dujo tarfasi. And so as the robber sits there with the Mughal emperor, he goes through his story, but he doesn't mention he says the story in third person, right? So he's like, oh, there was this robber, okay, and there was this gangster. Ek nar so kel kamawe apni jaan adhik sukh pawe. They both had a relationship with the same woman, and they both recognized her as their own. Dohra tin taskar ta so ramat darab thagan thak jaye. During the daytime, the robber would be able to spend time with her, whilst the gangster was out. Ran chor chorat grahin tahe mil thag aaye. And then at nighttime, it was the opposite. The robber would go out, and the gangster would stay home with this woman. Chaupai hod ramal he tin pari. Then there was a bet that was made of the scarf, right? And remember, the whole bet was whoever's stronger, was clever, whoever can play the better deception, play the better charitr, would receive the woman. Mohor saat said thug hu hari. The gangster went out and he robbed 700 gold coins. Punabari taskari ki aayi. Then it was the robber's turn. So he's telling the story to Shah Jahan. Let me tell you his story. Okay, his story is the most interesting. Let me tell you his story. So that's what the robber is saying to Shah Jahan right now. He's telling him this whole story, and he's like, now I'm going to tell you the most important part, the story of the robber. Hajrat te taskar grehe ayo. The robber, he came to the house of the emperor. Okay. Gapiya kehe jamalok pathayo. And he killed that gapiya, that person who's gossiping away, right, a journalist. Bastar lal pagya jo tahari. He took the red turban and clothes of Shah Jahan. Goes to bat Shah so kari. Then he had a conversation with the emperor. Dohra lal battar pagya hari lai ijar utar. The robber took the red clothes, the red turban and the clothes and the pants of Shah Jahan. Pran ubara sahaka hoye kavan kinar. And he saved the life of the emperor. So tell me, does the robber not deserve the woman, right? He saved the life of the emperor, right? And so that's kind of where I was saying, like in the beginning, that he is going to use him killing that gossiper as leverage later on, and that's kind of what he's doing here. And he's telling the Shah Jahan the story in third person, right? So Shah Jahan doesn't know if it's a real story or not, but if it is a real story and he's that robber, right, let's say, then he just saved his life, right, from this gossiper, right? And now the robber's using that as leverage. Lal bastar har pohchyo jahana pohchat koe pran ubaryo saha ko triya kavan ki hoye. He's like, that robber reached a place that not many can reach, i.e. Shah Jahan's home, right? He's able to get the clothes of the emperor, which not many people can do, and he saved his life, right, of the king, right? So tell me, who does the woman belong to? Chaupai dinke chade adalat pai. And so that was basically their conversation. Shah Jahan, presumably he keeps this guest at his house, and he's like, you know what, and tomorrow I'm gonna get justice, right? I'm gonna get justice for, you know, what you told me in the story, right? Shah Jahan understands that this is the truth, right? And that the robber is him. He's just kind of saying in third person to just, you know, like sometimes you say a story of in third person for many reasons, right? Maybe he just doesn't want, if it goes sour, he doesn't want him to be like, oh, that was me, right? It was just a story I'm telling you. And if it goes good, right, like the way it did, then yeah, it was me. I was the robber, right, basically. And so what happens is that he keeps Adal Shah, you know, in his house. Shah Jahan does, right? And then the next morning he's like, I'm gonna get you your justice, right? And so what he does, he sets up a court. And Shah Jahan could do that because he's the emperor, right? He's the law, right? So he sets up a court. And at daybreak, court was in session. And in that court, Shah Jahan makes a decree that this woman belongs to the robber. Shah Jahan then praises the robber, and it gives him much wealth. Okay. दोहरा एदल राजमती लई ठग कह दिए सनकार लाल बसर हर साह के तेहे गपिया कह मार. So Dohra is now just a summary of the whole Charitr. The Charitr is going to end here. So Adal Shah, he goes home, right, and he brings the royal decree with him that look, it is the fasla, is the decision of the emperor that this woman belongs to me, to Adal Shah. And so he receives the woman, her name was Rajmati, right? And the gangster was banished, right? So, and all of this was done by stealing the clothes of the emperor and killing that gossiper, right? And here's where the chitra ends. And one thing that really comes to my mind is the way he played his deception, right? Like, so the gangster, he played a pretty cool deception too, right? He was able to, get all these gold coins and whatever. That was a pretty big thing. But Adal Shah went for the biggest deception, right? He went straight to the highest thing, right? He went straight to the lawmakers, to get things done, and I think that really shows the truth of life, when a oligarch, for example, a elite, right? Someone who is very rich, someone who is very up there, they want something done, they'll go straight to the top to get it done. They won't. Think about India, right? When a politician, wants something done, they're not gonna go to the local police person, whatever. They're gonna go to the police person's boss. They're gonna go to the boss of the boss and get it done there, and it will trickle down. Like the Mexican cartels, right? What did they do? They didn't just buy off like one police officer, two police officers for security. They bought off the politicians. They bought off the generals of the army. They bought off the superintendents and the highest in the police force. They bought off those guys, which were a few individuals. But then the level of command trickles down, right? You buy off the president, you got the country, right? And that's kind of essentially what they're showing here. Adal Shah didn't just go and rob a small jewelry store. He robbed the king, and he made him declare, make a law for him, just for him, and that's kind of what this Charitr is showing here. It's showing that the biggest deception one can play is by going to the top of the top, and controlling that individual, and in that control, everything else will be in your control, and that's kind of where this takes us, and it ends here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, how people have done this in the past. And that's kind of one of my favorite topics to look in history, is how people have done that in the past, right? And I mentioned the Mexican cartels, I mentioned a little bit of India, right? And sometimes current events as well, things like that are happening right now, right? Especially here, I live in the States, politics is a really big thing right now, and depending when you watch this video, which will be quite after I record it, so I'm not really sure if at any point telling you what's happening now, but It's very similar. You have a politician, right, who is a president, right, and his right hand man, is a business owner, right, and you want something done, right? You want something done in the business world. What better place to go than the president's office? And what better person to be than the president's right-hand man, right? You get everything done for your own business, right? Presumably, right? Obviously I can't. These are just like suspicions. They're not like I can't prove them, but I'm sure some people can, right? And by the time you're watching this video, maybe some things will come more in light, right? Of how these individuals work, right? But yeah. And I just find all of that very interesting, and I hope you do too. So thank you so much for watching this episode, and I look forward in seeing you in the next one. Until then, take care. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.